All right. So here we are. Welcome into the SAC preseason media day. And in with us today is the head coach from UVA Wise, Coach Gary Bass. Coach, thank you for taking some time today.
Thanks for having me.
So football's right around the corner. We were just talking. You're new to the league in terms of a head coach, but you're not new to the league. You played at Catawba. So what's it like to kind of come back to the South Atlantic Conference?
I mean, it's one of those things I've been going for. I mean, I got done at Catawba, got a chance to go coach high school football for 4 years. Went to Missouri Southern for 2 seasons, and I was at Quincy University for 12 all in all, 5 as an offensive coordinator and last 7 as a head coach. So I've been gone for 14 years. It's nice to get back closer to home. God knows originally my mom and dad only being from Asheville, only about 2.5 hours away. It's nice for them that they're loving being around the grandkids. I got a 5-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter, so they've enjoyed it. But it feels like home already again. Love it here, and it's nice to be back with a lot of familiar faces in a lot of regards. I know the entire coaching staff from Mars Hill, for the most part, recruited me out of high school. So it's kind of funny. I still keep in touch with those. And then Coach Hester in their last year in the SAC before they move away was my college head football coach. So a lot of guys here that I know and grew up with and was the people that made me who I am today. So I'm very thankful for that.
Well, there's a lot of cool stories and cool ties in the league, but one of them has to be your first home game is against your alma mater, right? Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, my biggest thing, I've said this, people keep asking me that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's going to be very interesting and very neat for a lot of things. I'm sure there's going to be questions that Coach Haynes and other people there go, how does this work or this work for a game day? I'm like, I don't have a clue. We're going to figure it out together. But I mean, my biggest thing, I've already said this to our coaches, family, and our players here is it can't be about that. It's got to be about going out there and executing football plays and being disciplined and work hard to have an opportunity to beat an opponent. So I think the biggest thing for me for that week is going to be making sure that with our young men that it's no different than normal and status quo. We got to go out there and operate and do the things that we need to do to give ourselves an opportunity to come away with a victory. And then I can worry about that after the game.
So you come from Quincy in Illinois and put up some pretty big offensive numbers. Do you consider yourself more of an offensive coach, or is it both sides of the ball?
Well, I'm definitely more offensive minded. Played offensive line in college, was an offensive coordinator at high school for 3 years. Got the opportunity to go be an offensive line coach, my first college job at Missouri Southern State University. Learned under Bart Tatum, who was a phenomenal line coach with Sam Houston, Northwest Missouri State, and other years. Went to Quincy University originally as the offensive coordinator, strength and conditioning coordinator, and offensive line coach, and then the last 7 years the head coach. So for me, yeah, I mean, personally, I would consider myself an offensive guy, but I mean, I also understand that we got to be able to stop people on defense and got to make sure that we're equally as defensive minded, but we were able to have some success offensively. That was for sure.
So let's stay on the offensive side of the ball then. New coach, so I'm sure there's nobody really knows what to expect from UVA Wise. Are there some things that you've seen in the short time that you've been there as the head coach that give you some excitement on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and this kind of goes holistically for both sides, but even on offense as well, is we needed to come in here and establish a culture, getting our guys to understand what the foundations of our football program was going to be about. We got to treat it no different than building the house. I mean, you got to lay the foundation before you do anything else. So this spring, I thought our guys did a great job of believing in our culture. One thing you'll hear me say over and over again is I don't like saying the words buy-in. I know a lot of coaches use buy-in, but I don't. I look at it like this: if you can be bought into something, you can be bought out of something. I want our guys to believe in what we do and how we do it. And I think offensively this spring, we were able to come out and get a lot of our base offensive schemes in and be able to come out and had a really good spring ball. I was very happy with the work ethic, toughness, mentality, and the learning of our guys. They were very eager to learn and definitely come out and did a great job, not only in the weight room and the stuff we did winter conditioning wise, but also the stuff we did with spring ball and being able to learn and grow from that side of things.
I mean, that's something you hear coaches say a lot, especially new coaches. You want to establish a culture, right? How difficult is it to actually do that? I mean, it's one of those things that a lot of people talk about, but how hard is it to actually do?
Well, I think the biggest thing I tell our guys all the time, that changes the process. It's not an event. We have to be process driven, not result oriented. And when I say that, I think people kind of look at you sometimes and they're like, well, you're crazy. You don't care about the results. I do. but I'm a firm believer that A plus B plus C equals D. You don't get to D without doing the first three part right. So we've got to make sure that our process is in place, that our kids understand the definitions within our football program, the standards of what needs to take place. And I think that's probably the most difficult piece. I think a lot of people sometimes see Nick Saban, they see Dabo Swinney, they see those premier Division I coaches. They try to copy a lot of the things that they did because they had a lot of success. And I'm not Nick Saban, I'm not Dabo Swinney, I'm Gary Bass. And I've got to go out there and be myself. I tell our coaches and players all the time, be who you are and do it on purpose. And I mean that. We've got to go out there and be what we're going to be about as a football program. And what that looks like from a win-loss record standpoint this fall, we'll see. But I can assure you our kids are going to come out, they're going to execute, they're going to play hard, and they're going to do it for each other.
Shifting, I guess, to that defensive side of the ball, saw a little bit of your spring game highlights. Do you think the defense was more ahead of the offense in that game, or, how did that go, and what does the defense look like for you?
Well, I think offensively we were ahead of our defense, but most of that had to do with system. You look at defensive; they were an odd front team last year on defense. So defensive line, we had a couple injuries and some things that were pre-existing before we got here as a coaching staff. So we didn't have a lot of the depth that we wanted to have at defensive line to be able to do a lot of the things that we were able to do and want to do defensively. So we kind of had to change some things around to be able to get through 15 practices and spring ball somewhat. But at the same point in time, I thought those kids, one of the biggest things I talk to our defense about all the time is getting to the football. You hear people talk about all the time about scheme, this, and this, and missing tackles. Well, I look at it like this: if we can get 11 hats to the football, if someone misses a tackle, we've got more people there ready to rally behind it. We got to look like bees getting to a swarm. So for us, I think the biggest thing I noticed from our defense in the spring was they did a phenomenal job of believing in what Coach Cannon, our defensive coordinator, does, but also going out there and being able to attack the football and get as many hats to the ball as we could.
So camp is a couple weeks away, right? It's right around the corner. What
2 weeks.
Yeah, how is successful? What would be a successful camp in your mind?
I think that number one, that thing that coaches, I think, lose translation with or transition with is you got a lot of guys that, they haven't played a true football anything since spring ball. So even if you've had guys on campus, which we've had the luxury for the first time in school history to have some guys here that working out on their own and doing things within the rules of the NCAA, making sure that we ease our guys into things because I think sometimes coaches go out there and they try to do 60 plays in a row and do too much too early, and you see a lot of injuries. So I think the first thing is continuing to gel the new players we've got coming in with freshmen and transfers, but also getting the culture instilled with those guys. The second piece of that is going to be making sure that we can develop our guys and be able to push them through what needs to be done schematically on all three phases of the game. And then third, we got to stay healthy. For us, those three phases, if we can get those things done, we'll have a successful camp. And I think our guys are itching at the bit to be able to get back to work because I think they miss each other.
Sure do. So give me some names, some people that might have popped off the page or off the screen for you once you saw them in person and got some time maybe in the spring or some of the work over the summer.
Well, I definitely think you look at quarterback first. Tell people all the time you got to have a guy that you trust there if you want to win football games. You don't have a successful football program without a successful quarterback. And I'm not sitting here saying you got to go light up the stat line, but he's got to go out there and be smart and be your field general. Jake Corcoran has done a phenomenal job this spring. He was lights out. Biggest thing I wanted to see him do was take care of the football because it's one thing he didn't do well in the fall. And he did a phenomenal job of that. He operated our offense. He's one of the biggest leaders on this football team, and our guys gravitate towards him. So he's done a phenomenal job. Running back position, Ian Scammell, who's from Grundy around this area, came in, redshirted last year, solidified himself as our starting running back for the fall. Then you look at tight end, and I'm very lucky being the tight end coach. We've got Dorian Goddard, UVA transfer. He's been here for a few years. He's going to be a senior who's 6'4". He's 235 pounds. He's athletic. He's physical. Peyton McClanahan, who's from Abingdon, we've transitioned him a little bit and some of the things that he's going to do. He's done awesome. Seth Fishback at receiver, DJ Powell at receiver. That offensive line, I think, is gravitated and done some very good things under Coach Ladd. You can definitely tell with Coach Compton and his pedigree from the past that playing in the NFL and doing all the things he did a great job with those guys. And we're just trying to make sure we continue the progress with him. So, very happy with Riley Bodine. He's going to be a senior for, I think this is year 7 or whatever it is for Riley. He actually took a year off, and at one point in time, I was a coach on staff here. and played last year as well. William Rudisill, some other guys, Zach Plunk. There's a bunch of group guys in that group we really think a lot of. Defensively, I feel great about our linebacking core. I mean, we got 6 guys that I think can just flat out play. And Nasir Sproul, who's young, Raphael Mays, who's young, Ken Hines, who's good, young player. And then you've got other guys behind them from DeCorian Jones Montgomery, who's going to be a phenomenal player for us, Jimmy Simmons, and the list goes on. So I feel really good about where we're at linebacker right now. And we got some guys with some experience. Defensive back, we've got Matt Strong and Jalen Jones, who are probably our 2 guys coming back with the most experience that are veteran guys. But we'll have some youth in that room as well. And then defensive line, we've got some guys getting back off injury from the spring. And then we were able to go out and get some transfers that we felt really good about in that room as well. So all in all, feel really good about where we're at right now. It is going to be different for me. I'm used to the school I was at was a private D2 school where we had 150, 160, 170 football players, and we're coming into camp with 100. So we've got to do a great job as a coaching staff of making sure that we manage reps and keep those guys healthy for an entire season.
So obviously you're going into your first year. How would you define a successful first year, or when you get into the November or December time of the year and look back, what do you think you'll see from that UVA Wise squad?
I think when you just talk about football, I think the biggest thing when I talk to our players about is getting kids that play for each other. I go back and I look at some things from prior years, and at times it looked like I was watching a team that was playing for themselves individually. When I watched us play in the spring, I saw a group of young men that were playing for each other in this community and this university and the alumni. And you could see that they believed in what we were trying to do from that standpoint. So I think continuing to drive our culture and the belief in our football program and what we're trying to turn it into is huge. I want to develop freshmen. I want to develop the young men within our football program. Yeah, we'll have transfers from time to time, but we've got to make sure we do a good job of developing talent and developing character and integrity and things of those young men. So for me, I think the belief in the culture has got to be one. It has to. You can't talk about foundation and then not drive it home during football season. I think outside of that, from a football standpoint, we got to be simple and we got to be great teachers as a coaching staff. Yes, we had 15 practices in the spring, but this is still very new to a lot of these guys with what we're doing in all 3 phases of the game. And we've got to be great at relationship building. We've got to be great teachers, and we got to keep things simple. And I think if we do those things, I think offensively, defensively, special teams wise, we'll be successful. What does that mean? I've had a lot of people ask, Coach, how many games are you going to win next year? I don't know the answer to that question. I'd be a liar if I sit here and told you. But I think for us to continue to build a program, we got to continue to drive the culture, the standards, the expectations of what we're trying to accomplish. And I believe if we do that and we continue to go out and play hard and do what needs to be done and execute and have discipline, then we'll have an opportunity to be successful when we play people this fall.
Well, there you go. Coach Gary Bass, first-year head coach, UVA Wise, kicking it off here, in a couple of weeks. So appreciate you taking some time. Best of luck this year.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.